like the New York City, I have a lot of New York City members, they don't like the New York City model. They think it's punitive, they think that there's more of a gotcha than this is how you avoid the pitfall. They don't want it. They like more, they're looking at more of a Connecticut model. The question came up, are we doing matching funds for every single party? For the, Independence Party, the Family Party, and then if we are, how many candidates in each of these parties? How much public funding are you gonna do? None of these things had good, easy answers. And that's why it became okay. We know we have to make the move. We need to make sure that it gets done, but nobody has those answers. And that's why the commission. Yes, we did do something to help the environment. We did ban the plastic bags. And it was, I can see Eileen up here. Is my time up?
No, just, if you want to talk us through
about
this,
these things? Okay.
And then we've got.
Okay, so we just finished with the campaign finance.
What happened and what didn't happen on the
Okay.
next slide, so, you can.
Okay, so that's gonna happen. The second early voting, we gave money for that, and electronic poll, the permanent tax cap, local property tax increases. Okay, that happened, $1 billion. We were happy about that. ACA cup. So does anybody have any questions about any of this stuff? Did you all like everything? I don't know what.
Well, that's okay. Go to the next slide, Liz.
Okay. The cash bail, I like that.
Yep.
That was a big fight. And again, everybody had different things, but we had to craft something, and I'd say the Assembly and the Senate really worked hard, to make sure that we were hitting the most, that there would never be another Khalif Browder and so on and so forth. And we were able to craft that deal, speedy trial, also discovery, all good stuff. Okay,
So Liz, the next slide.
Next slide. We all protected your individual, your ability to contribute as well. You're happy.
Yes.
Okay.
So the
Okay, you're fighting for the commission. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's going to be important that people keep the awareness and the pressure on to let people know that we're, we want to come out with a real campaign finance reform. And like I said, I think that's going to be so key in to the things that you want to see in the commission, and make sure people understand that you haven't gone to sleep and said, oh well, the commission is working, so let them do that. Right. So I think that's critically important. Not enough public.
Why not pass your own bill?
What's that?
Why not, in the meantime, hold hearings?
I think we are going to pass here. We are going to hold hearings.
You could pass a bill, and it could be the gold standard bill that the commission then has to work from.
Well, they don't have to work from anything.
You can legislate, right?
Thank you.
You don't have to wait.
No, I mean, we could, but we didn't, which was our reality.
The term's not over.
Well, no, it isn't, but we've got, here's the reality too. The term is very short, and who's interested in rent laws here? Anybody? Okay, I mean, there are things that we will try to do simultaneously. The other thing that we want to do is this number 2, which is education. That matters. It matters. And you can't get in here in January with somebody else's budget saying this is how we're going to create this education formula, so you do it that way, because you know what? We will always wind up with the same result, because the same schools that are underfunded will continue to be underfunded no matter how much, because there's certain levels that have to go to certain places and so on and so forth. There's a lot of things that have to be fixed. And what I'm saying to you, as an advocacy community, help us fix those things by whatever your focus is, stay focused on that thing. There are, for us, about maybe 20 some odd days left in the session where very big, important things also have to be done. So I'm just trying to be realistic about where you can be helpful, where we need to get something done. The rent laws expire by June. I mean, you know, and tenants are expecting us to make some serious changes here. So I'm just trying to be realistic. Pelletier tax would have been more lucrative. Our you know, conference put it forward, did not, I mean, let me go back to Pelletier in terms of what people were thinking. The only reason they were thinking of the Pelletier tax was in order to help, again, a funding stream to the MTA, period. That was it. So people were less focused on, you know, and I understand, like, sometimes people are focused on who as opposed to what. We were trying to figure out how much money we could make sure gets to the MTA, because the only way that we are going to fix this system is if we invest in it. Right. And there just wasn't it. So it turns out that people were, I guess, more like really very interested in who. You know, our focus was on getting the money, and so the other option was able to get us the money at the time. And so that's what happened there. Congestion pricing, that was almost in that campaign finance situation where we knew that in order to have a sustainable revenue flow for the MTA, that we were going to have to do something in terms of congestion pricing. As it had turned out going into this, the governor and the mayor had agreed to this construct, which they put before us. Our conference put together and I had two of my members, Senator Comrie, who was actually anti-congestion pricing when he started, Senator Comrie, as well as Senator Tim Kennedy, who's the transportation, Senator Comrie's corporation, and I had them put together a working group. And so as it turned out, the working group talked about the things that we would want to see in terms of congestion pricing. And one of those things was some guaranteed money coming to Metro North, as well as to the Long Island Railroad. We wanted to make sure there was a consideration of exemptions, especially, you know, people aren't being double tolled, Tappan Z, and so on and so forth. We wanted to make sure there was a forensic audit. We wanted to make sure that there would be some, you know, more transparency, accountability, and so on. So we worked with the framework and got to this point where, again, nobody had the bill. People knew we needed the revenue that would be sustained, and we wanted to make sure that the suburbs, you know, Long Island and the Hudson Valley were not going to be neglected. So that was where we got, and that is where again, this panel will help us get to the right place. The 2020 census, we can continue, you know, I mean, people put in 40 million as a possibility. I don't know if people were necessarily believing 40 million was that number, but again, the census is extremely important to each and every one of us. We did not fight this fight so that we would lose next year and not have the ability to draw the lines, because we know if we just draw the lines the way the people are, yep, we will get a better representation.
Where that could make up the difference there?
Not identified in the budget, but I'm saying, you know, it wasn't, you know, there's always those, but, you know, the commitment will not, we don't have it. I guess the governor pretty much has full sway of the budget. But like I said, I don't think that the $40 million was something that everybody agreed the cost would be, but again, I have an appointee to the commission we all do, and I don't know if you all know Andy Beveridge, but he is extremely, have you all ever? What's that? Yeah, I mean, his whole life is this. And he's been incredibly helpful. He's my appointee. You know, I put real people on these things because, you know, I want to get real results. And demographically, you know, we tried. I got Hector Figueroa is also 32 DJ. He's my other appointee, as well as Byron Brown from Buffalo. So, I mean, you know, I'm trying to make sure that folks who are understand how important this is are at the table, at least on my behalf. Legalization of recreational marijuana, that was another thing that we just couldn't get to. We almost got there, but finding the appropriate, especially in terms of the disparate impact that it has had on, you know, people of color and community of color, and how to make that right. Who's gonna benefit from the economics of the new booming industry, and how do we expunge records, seal records, how do we get people, you know, that hasn't been worked out properly. And of course, you know, there's communities who want to opt out, there's the education piece, there's just a lot of stuff that, you know, as far as I know I'm concerned, and I'm sure the speaker, and I mean, I think all of us, we believe that it's inevitable, but we don't believe that we have to, you know, unlike rent laws, you know, there's not a timeline that this has to be done, and we do have to get this right. So yes,
yeah,
lasting crazy thing.
right.
So here you all know now how the sausage is made in the room where, okay, we've got still raw meat and blah, blah, blah. Then after we've sort of put together raw meat, the other thing that happened is that the governor kept throwing new ingredients into the sausage. Now, we began with a governor who every day was saying, oh, we're going to have a late budget, oh, they don't know how to govern, oh, they're so stupid, they can't do math. I mean, that was the backdrop, understand. And unlike the assembly that's been in the majority forever, we're a new majority, and I've got 15 new people. And a lot of these people, as you know, came to change the world, and so did I. Yeah. And, you know, so did you. Mm-hmm. But as I said, nobody can change the world in 3 months, you know. I mean, that's just a reality. So, one of the things, though, I did not want to risk, nor did any of my great colleagues want to risk, is our reputation for being able to get the job done.
Right.
Because if we can't get the job done, right, then that serves as the backdrop for every negative thing that they want to throw at us between now and the next time we run.
Right.
And I was not prepared to cede that ground.
Right.
And the wisdom of our conference as a whole, our new members who had been there, understood that too. And after we got past hurdle after hurdle, that allowed us to get an on-time budget despite what was happening, other things started coming in, which I think could have a less mature, less focused conference would have said, okay, that's fine, that's a deal breaker. Okay, Ben, that's a deal breaker, because it kept coming. And the reality is how this works. Say everybody said, you know what, this isn't good enough for me, I can't do it, I came for this, you're not giving me that, blah, blah, blah. Anybody could have said that. I have, and that's why I go back to school funding, which is so critical. I have in my membership a guy that actually walked from New York City to Albany about this foundation funding. You know, there is nobody in my conference who is not serious. The people who have been there for a long time are serious because they stayed despite a whole lot of craziness. the people like me who lost my 18 votes and came back and fought, and here I am in a history-making position. I'm not even saying, but I'm not going to get so unfocused that I forget what it takes to get across the finish line. And that's an alliance with the speaker and the assembly, because you know, we can pass everything. If they don't pass it, it doesn't work. And the same token. And by the way, it matters that we are on the same page, because there's people in very high places, low places, medium places, unknown places, that would rather see that not be. And that goes against everything that we came to do. So I understand the zealousness, we all have it. And any day, those people could have walked away because they were mad at the PACB, they were mad at this, they were mad at them, they could have walked away. But the big picture and the long game is much more important. We are playing a long game. Have we walked away, guess what? Because the law is the law, the governor would have been able to say, you know what, I told you they were too stupid, they were too disheveled, they were too dissembled to be able to actually get a budget done. I told you, so I'm going to pass the budget anyway, in the way that I said it should have been passed initially, and he would have called us back every day and put every single thing that he wanted, that we may not have wanted, that we didn't want, that we never thought he could do, including that's gone, but in this thing called an extender, and he would have said, you pass it or you shut down government. So not only would we be dysfunctional, unable to govern, but then if we didn't do all the stuff that he told us to do, we would be shutting down government. I don't want to start like that. I'm not going to end like that. I don't mind fighting on principled turf with principled people about when to do, what to do, how to do, why to do, but I am not going to disadvantage myself. So, this is what we got. I think for the most part we did extraordinary things. For the 3 months that we have been there, going into our 4th month, we have already changed lives. I am proud of it.
We were trying to make you come, and I wasn't sure it was going to work, so thank you. I think I know why you're here. So you are part of our Congressional District 16, and you know, we want the subject here, NYCD16, that's right. So we've met our other assembly folks and wanted to have you come, since you're the speaker by yourself, and just tell us a bit about yourself. And you know, we are a very active group here. Andrea can tell you that, and we're here to support and challenge and push so that the things that we really want to see happen for good government happen. But we want to be your ally and work with you as best as we can, but you'll feel challenged at the same time. But tell us
I'm okay with challenge.
Okay.
Let me just give a little revisionist history as Andrea, Madam Majority Leader, had spoken. And I remember when she first ran, I didn't really know much about her, but I did give a contribution for my campaign. And I actually came up on election day from the Bronx to try to help her unseat Senator Spano. And I remember saying to her a couple of weeks ago, I said, who would have thought from that day that both of us would have these two important positions of leading the state. So let me tell a little bit about myself, and then I want you to bring the lesson for the day back on the screen. So I've lived in my assembly district my entire life, the 83rd Assembly District, which is right outside of Co-op City. It's like Boston Road, White Plains Road, Miami Road. I'm a total product of public schools. I did go to Brooklyn Tech for 1 year, but I graduated in the honors program from Truman High School, which is in Co-op City. I got a bachelor's degree in applied math and statistics from Stony Brook, and I have an MBA in finance from Baruch. And so budget was really my forte. And then before I became speaker, I was the labor chair in the assembly, and then we all know what happened in 2015, and then my colleagues gave me the privilege of, to me, having, I think, the greatest job in the world, but I'll say second greatest job in the world, because being majority leader is a little more powerful than being speaker of the assembly, because the majority leader gets to confirm the governor's appointments. The assembly doesn't get to do that. But in the years that I was speaker, I had always said that whenever I go speak at a new elected officials event, I'd say to them, I said, you know, we all campaign to say that we want to change the world, we want to undo all of the ills of society. But really what the job is of an elected official is to just make it better. Just make the area you represent just a little bit better. And so that's what I'm trying to do since I became speaker. And I'll tell you this, all of the great things that the governor takes credit for, except for one, all happened since I became speaker of the assembly. Except for marriage equality, which I voted for, but I was not the speaker then, but minimum wage, paid family leave, raise the age, criminal justice reform, in great partnership with Andrea in the Senate. And for us in the assembly, we've been and so Andrea and I had like a pre-arrangement. So now that they're in the majority, all of these wonderful, great progressive things have happened. Now you can put the slide up, because there's a couple of things I know that people want to ask me about, challenge me about, but I want to. So let me start with public finance and the campaigns. Me personally, I have not voted for public finance in a campaign since 2009, because that was before Citizens United. And now becoming Speaker of the Assembly in 2013 or 14, when the Assembly put forward the bill, I did not vote for it. Because now as the head of the Democratic Assembly Campaign Committee, my job is to win seats that Republicans have held. And I'll give you an example of one seat that we won last year in the Buffalo area. There was a guy named Ray Walter. And the last time Ray Walter had a challenge and they spent about the same amount of money, Ray Walter won. In order for me to win this seat this year, I had to outspend Ray Walter 7-1, and we only won that seat by 4 points. So all I've ever asked is, as we move forward on public finance and the campaigns, that people understand that New York City is a little different than the rest of the state and things in and around New York City. And I heard someone just say to Andrea, well, how come we didn't do a bill? I'm not sure whether a 6-to-1 match is the answer or whether a grant program is the match, and let me tell you why. An assemblywoman from Brooklyn named Latrice Walker says she represents one of the poorest communities in Brooklyn. So now we go to having public financing of campaigns in every single race, from Assembly, Senate, Council, Congress,
County legislature?
Well, not in the city. I'm just talking about in the city. DA, whatever, there's like 14 different seats. So how does a poor community, a resident of a poor community, support opportunities of 14 different seats? That's a challenge. Then the question should become, if all of you live here in Yonkers, right? Why should people, well, for the most part. One of the other concerns that I have is, if you just have a straight matching system, that means contributions can come from anywhere to influence a race. And I believe, and if everyone is saying to me that they want to make sure that the grassroots person has the opportunity to run, I feel, well, the grassroots people from that community should be the ones who are putting forward on this. So when Andrea mentioned before, maybe have a grant program where people in the community say, you know what, I got 100 people that have given me, I'd say whatever the contribution is, and maybe you get a grant like Connecticut does, and not into a matching system, because why should it, now I'm gonna go back. If I'm running for office in Yonkers, why should a contribution from Brooklyn have the same weight in terms of determining who the legislator is in Yonkers as one of the neighbors in Yonkers. So these are some of the challenges that we have to look at. We don't know whether the matching program is better than a grant program. And the Pierre de Terre. We were pressured to come up with $28 billion of bonding capacity for the MTA to solve, well, they need about 40 billion, but we're still 12 billion short. But the goal was to come up with $28 billion of bonding capacity. In order to pay the debt service on $28 billion, you need about $1.8 billion. So when the Pierre de Terre was proposed, which we proposed and the Senate proposed, it's not as though revenue just came in and waved the magic wand and said, oh, you can't do this. They did raise a constitutional issue that says if you have 2 apartments, how do you tax them differently? We're still trying to say that, but if the bigger answer and the bigger challenge was, well, we don't do the Pierre de Terre, or revenue decides to sue, and this gets locked up for a year or 2 in court, what do we do for the MTA? So we just said, all right, if it's really about trying to make sure we have enough money for the MTA, that's why we did the real estate transfer tax. It wasn't because revenue, put on some cape and all of a sudden decided to tell people that this is something that you can't do. We had an immediate cash problem that we wanted to do because remember the governor had hoped, even though myself and Andrea weren't in agreement on this, to use the revenue from marijuana for the MTA. I felt like the first place that marijuana money should go is to the communities that have been wrongly harmed.
Yes.
Right on.
Yes.
The criminal side of it, so when that kind of fell off, then the governor said, yeah, let's do Pierre de Terre, but then some were raised. I still have our Ways and Means staff, and I'm sure Andrew's doing the same thing, trying to deal with the constitutional issues of saying, I have 2 apartments that are next door to each other. One has is the primary residence, and one is a non-primary residence, and you want to tax them differently. We're still trying to figure that, but we felt like the most important thing was to come up with I think it was about $300 and something million. I think it's 395. Don't kill me if that number is off by a few, so that we can come up with enough money for the MTA. So there was no secret deal, there was no super revenue, there was nothing like that. We just wanted to make sure that we had enough funding, to the MTA. On the census, remember the census forms don't go out until early next year. So you can use the 20 million this year to kind of be to the pre-people, hey, get ready that the census is coming. And it doesn't mean in next year's budget we can't come up with the other 20 million to follow through as well. So I wouldn't worry so much about that. We'll push for that. I'm trying to see did I miss anything else here.
For the legals, I think a big concern for many of us is the revenue stream, how people falling short with Trump tax plan and all of the the projected revenues coming in with much less than what actually is there. So the recreational marijuana and the sports betting and the Pierre de Terre tax, not having them, takes it, makes it that education and other really important programs are not being funded. So is there a working group, or how can we help as an advocacy community to make sure that these things do happen, but very well thought out way?
Let me just say, I'd say by a week from now, after everybody files their taxes, because by then we'll have a clearer picture. See, the problem that we had.
We got hit.
No, we all got hit. I had to pay an extra $5,000 because of the salt cap.
Yep.
But on the wealthier people, who it seems like they pay estimated tax. And I'm sorry if I'm giving everybody an accounting finance class here. They paid the first 3 quarters. And all of a sudden they stopped paying the estimated tax in the 4th quarter. And we're not sure what happened. I don't know whether the accountants told them, hold on, let's wait, let's study this a little more. So what I was gonna say is I think we'll have a much better picture of what the finances are, I'd say maybe a week or so after everybody's taxes are due on Monday, as to what is the state's financial picture. When it comes to sports betting, I'll be honest, the members of the assembly are not that cool on gambling. They kind of look at gambling as blood money. And And then the online sports betting is, there's a legitimate concern that people will be, laying in their beds, gambling away their mortgages. So there's a legitimate concern. It's gaining a little bit more. We in the assembly, we wanted to, we always like to ask those who can afford to pay more, to give more. We did try to ask the millionaires and the extra millionaires and the super millionaires to do a little more, but I know it's a little different. Andrea's politics is a little different in the Senate than in the Assembly, and one of the pledges that we tried to make to each other is we don't want to kind of like jam each other, so because we want to show that there's a real partnership between the Assembly and the Senate. But again, I want to go back to the top issue. I have the greatest belief that there will be a campaign finance system that will be brought forth from this commission. As Andrea said, nobody had the right answer as to whether to do a matching program, to do a grant program, and everybody, as she said, no one wanted to do the city's program. You have people, I have one person in the Bronx, she's a district leader, she ran for the city council in 2009, and I think she got hit with a $130,000 personal liable bill that she's still trying to pay off. So I think we'd like to get it right. We'd like to get one that's fair, and also that doesn't allow, as I said, if you have just a straight matching system, you could have 7 or 8 of the richest districts in the state and then start to plan out and fund races. So we just want to make sure that local people have the ability to run, and one that can take in, some districts, and I'm looking at assembly districts, some assembly districts are much wealthier than others, and there's some districts that are poorer than others. And I think we need to come up with a system that takes into account the ability of people in poorer communities to be able to participate in the matching system, because it's just going to be a matching system that's a free-for-all, and people can raise money from the richer districts, and I don't know if it's really the voice of those individual districts that are actually participating. If this is what people are saying, we want a system that empowers the local person to be able to run for office.
Thank you very much. Can the people in the...
and the uncertainty of it, but given that your analyst teams would have some time to resolve those, will you pledge here to reintroduce it at the next time?
It's still already introduced, but we're looking to try to amend the bill that could deal with the concerns. Let me just tell you this, the Democrats in the Senate, we like to tax. We had, like I said, we had an enhanced, we taxed people who made $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, I think 50 million and 100 million. We had layered taxes on that. We had the pied-à-terre tax. We've done the mansion tax. So we absolutely believe in asking those who can afford to do a little more to help out those.
So will you pledge to reintroduce that this session?
It's already, I'm saying it's still into the bill.
That's the wrong word. I'm using the wrong word.
Yes, we're trying to look at a way to pursue, to deal with the constitutional issues that got raised.
Great, thank you. Rona?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank Andrea Stewart Cousins for bringing back the dignity to the New York State Senator.
Yeah.
I have never heard how the sausage is made. I have never heard a majority leader, Sheldon Silver, anybody or a speaker come and actually say what happens in the room. Right. I still want to know what the curtains look like. But
usually open.
And I just want to say 2 more things, even though I would like
one more. We've got other people.
Okay, 1.5. So, one is...
Is this for Andrea or it's for me?
No, it's a compliment for both of you. So I'm Executive Vice President of 1199, and I want to thank you because I don't think people realize...
Your president is my constituent, by the way.
He tells us all the time. I don't think people realize the importance of what they did to save healthcare in this state. Yes. They saved healthcare. Not only for the workers, but for all of us who unfortunately may have to be patients in hospitals and nursing homes. But I do have one issue, and I know, and I'm a realist, and I don't expect you to do everything. I think you did a fabulous job in the 3 months. However, I'm wearing a sign for a reason, American Needs Union. So I'm very concerned about the prevailing wage. I'm really concerned about these MF developers that are stealing all our tax money and not using it to build real jobs for our youth, for people of color, communities of color, the unions of the trades. Listen, I've never defended the trades in my life, I'm healthcare. But when I see the devastation to our communities and the potential, so all I'm asking you is to keep it on your radar, because these greedy whatevers should not be getting away with what they're getting away using our tax dollars. That's
I
all
will
I'm
say
asking.
this, there are, I'd say, hopefully productive conversations happening between the trades and the
Right.
developers to see if we can come up with something that can make people happy. In this business, no one's gonna agree. If everybody agrees all the time, you're both crazy.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is come up with a compromise that they can
Right.
both
Good,
live.
thank you. Tara?
Thank you. So thank you very much for coming today, for going into as much detail as you did. We hope that you will come back again and we'll continue this conversation. With what we were just talking about, with regard to labor, with regard to housing, which is affordable housing in the state is at utter shambles. It all ties back to money in politics. Revenue is the largest donator of money to campaigns. And so,
Real estate.
Real estate.
Board of New York, not to ours. I mean, not to ours.
and unless we get the money out of politics, we're really never going to see the kind of change that we've all been talking about for the past 2 years. There's some frustration that there's now a commission and that this was, left to a commission of unknown appointees and taken out of the legislative process. So with that said, will you both commit to working both sides of the aisle, the houses together to come up with legislation? We have had public campaign financing in New York City for 30 years. It's been largely worked out. So I'm very unclear in
It
terms of.
depends, I'll just say this, it depends on who you speak to. The legislators in the Assembly, and I'll let Andrea speak for those in the Senate, those who have gone through the system and those who have been treasurers for the New York City system have a huge problem with the system. And so that's what I'm saying. 3 months, it could be a long time. Could they come up with a solution? But, we've asked this commission to look at it. And this is the other thing, and I want to mention, my friend that mentioned the healthcare. That was a $550 million cut to healthcare. And I'm going to be honest, we are still short about $190 million.
Don't tell George.
That $550 million. So one of the other things is everyone is asking us, well, you want us to finance, public finance the campaigns, that's $100 million. So we either have to raise the tax to do it, or we'll have to find something else. So that's something else that this commission has been tasked to do. Give us ideas that will raise revenue, that will pay for the public financing campaigns.
So I think our working group meeting with you to go
Sure.
over these details is really important. Peter Beckman had a question, I think, about healthcare.
Yeah. Again, to acknowledge saving healthcare in this budget go-round. The attacks on healthcare continue in Washington. They are relentless. Can you say a few words about what's going to happen with the New York Health Act this session?
So let me touch on a couple of things. Early in the year, myself, the new majority leader, Crystal Peoples-Stokes, and our chair of state and Fed, Nilly Rosa, we went down and we met with the federal delegation. I think all but 2 members of Congress and both of our U.S. senators were there. And I mentioned to them the concerns about health care, and they vowed to step up. They also vowed to step up to help us with public housing and also with DET. Now, when it comes to the New York Health Act, which the Assembly has sponsored, we still support it, but there are some things that have to be worked out. Like public unions in the city pay no health care. And so that's a challenge that we have to figure out, that how do you ask the public sector unions who didn't pay any health care, now they're going to have to pay part of theirs. So there's still some things that we have to work out. I think we still support it. I think in principle, again, I can't speak for the Senate. The Assembly supports it. And then we'd also have to work out the transition of the $190 billion. How do you work out that transition of the collection of the $190 billion that would get us to the New York Health Act? So those are the things we have to talk.
Thank you. Ginny or Judy?
Alright, so
These guys.
I don't want to dominate it,
That's okay,
Andrew.
well,
Well, they get to see me,
Okay,
they don't
all
get
right,
to see
okay.
you. So.
No, he's coming back.
Yeah, now you're there.
I have no problem in coming back.
Great. Ginny?
Okay, so our immigration would really like to know what's gonna happen with like driving it together bill. Humanitarian and safety issues aside, can it just be framed in terms of bringing in revenue for the state, which is linked between the taxes and fees on driver's license, purchasing cars, lowering health, car insurance for people, and not to mention supporting the workforce of places where people cannot get to work without a car. We understand that right now, our group can focus on the separation of families and what this means because it's drastic here, it's the only way we can take control in a way about this issue that's happening at the border. But in terms of the people on Long Island, which we understand is where the real sticking point is, and upstate New York, where there's a lot of pushback with immigration, is there any way to just frame this in terms of the budget and bringing in revenue so we can get this passed? We have now 66 co-sponsors in the Assembly, in the Assembly, and 26 co-sponsors in the Senate. Why isn't this happening now?
Yeah, we have tried to frame it as revenue, and we have certainly framed it as a public health concern. And, you know, I mean, it's as well as, you know, just the right thing to do. But as I say over and over, the education piece to places outside of where the immigrant community is really part and parcel of our fabric and family has to really be done. And I've taken it on myself to show up, to speak out, and to continue to try and frame it. And we just don't have people, we don't have enough votes right now for a bill like that to pass.
What do you need? How many?
We need 32. So, yeah, so we need 32.
So how can we help?
Well, you have to educate, and not, I mean, you can stay here and educate, but New York City, Westchester, we all know that, you know? So the places where both, there's no Republican, I don't think, if you ever look on that list, that actually is signed on. And this goes back to the same thing that always drove me nuts. Because I used to believe, for example, with reproductive health, that people understood how important the right to one's own reproductive choices were and how we are in 2019. And I always believed that if you put that on the floor, the Republicans, because, everybody has a woman in their life who probably has, had to make some reproductive choice, I figured that they just weren't putting it on because they didn't want to have to take a tough vote. Well, when we passed it, finally, there's not one Republican. Yeah, clap for that. And I'll say this, those we passed it, not one Republican voted for it. Not one. Not one. Okay? So this is a really polarized time that we are in. So, just thinking something. Do you realize with this budget, these Republicans are talking about taxes. Not one Republican voted for the budget.
Wow.
Not one. With the tax cap in it, not one. With $1 billion more for education, not one. So, like I said, it's okay to say, oh, you should do this, you should do that, but you gotta understand that we are in a boat that's only us, and in order for this boat to keep swimming and sailing, which we need to do, especially since we're facing redistricting opportunities next year, we gotta be clear. We don't need to be beating up each other. We don't need to be attacking each other. We need to understand that right now, we got a recalcitrant Republican Party that belongs to Donald Trump, and they're not voting for humanity, they're not voting for sanity, they're not voting for any of those.
Can I just on issues like this, and I do believe in the assembly, we probably have the votes to do it. But what you have to do, and this happened the same thing with criminal justice, just coming out and saying that I have 76 votes to pass it may not be enough, because sometimes what you have to do, there's opponents like to use the fear factor. This happened with the DREAM Act. This happened with reproductive health. This happens with a lot of with criminal justice reform. They use the fear factor to scare people and threaten people in terms of when it comes to votes. So what I think what has to happen in situations like this, you have to not just ask people to support a bill, you also have to go and educate communities on the things that you just mentioned. That even on the issue of states that have passed driver's licenses, you've seen the number of hit and run incidents have gone down, because if people have the ability to have insurance, they're not going to flee the scene. So there's so many reasons to do it. So I think what we have to start to do is to educate the people on the positives, so that those fear factors are not being used. And I guess and sometimes, and I say this in general, when legislators have a hesitance in supporting something, it's not because they're a mean, evil person. It's just that sometimes there's some real motivating factor that is causing them to have some hesitance. And I just ask people to have this. This is going to take a little more time to educate people, I believe, on driver's licenses, because the opposition will try to use this as a fear factor at this point.
Okay, it's now 2:30. We've got other parts of the meeting.
Issue of how the Assembly apparently is refusing to fund a college education for the families of children. So it's total BS, am I correct?
It is
so
total
maybe
BS.
You could explain so that, because when you see it, you think, oh, and it sounds terrible. The allegation is that we're funding an education for illegals, but we won't for Gold Star families. So if you could help us.
There's actually a merit program that we actually have in the legislature that would qualify families of veterans who passed away for their children to go to school. But what ends up happening sometimes, people will put out these bills, and in bills post-budget, you usually don't really put out a lot of bills post-budget with a fiscal impact, because most of the things with a fiscal impact are supposed to be done in the budget. It was really just a Republican gotcha moment to try to show up the Assembly, when we already do have a program that does this. And to me, shame on President Trump, because my feeling is when it comes to veterans, as great a job as they did, they defended the country. And I actually believe the country should be doing much more for veterans than they did.